Hello, everybody. We recently reached 300 subscribers and have decided to do another giveaway. All you have to do to enter is be subscribed, comment on any of our 2022 videos telling us what your favorite video of the new year so far is and what kind of videos you want to see in the future. We will be giving away a couple cold foil promo heroes. We have one cold foil Icelander.
We've also got one cold foil Data Doll, as well as one cold foil KO Berserker Runt.
The giveaway will last for the month of March 2022, with the prizes being raffled in April. Thank you for your continued support. Hope to see you all at the Pro Tour in May. Bye for now. Hello, everybody, and welcome to a Spark of Genius Flesh and Blood production. We're back with another hero profile in our hero profile series here, a little bit of a deep dive. Last one we did would be KO. So we're going to actually finish Brute first. It's not the class I thought we would finish first. Brute was not even close to my higher list here, but today we're going to be doing Rhinar with our good friend, Mr. Dimos K. I'm just going to call him Dimos K because that's how everyone.
That's his Discord handle.
Pleasure to be here.
That's his Discord handle. Yeah, he's top 8 at the Canadian Nationals with Oldham. Very prolific player in the Canadian scene with Rhinar specifically, among other heroes. So who better to bring in here than a player that actually plays a lot of Brute? Go figure. And so we're going to be talking to Dimos, kind of picking his brain a little bit about Rhinar's kind of status after Everfest, a couple of key parts about playing Rhinar, how to build him, different kind of nooks and crannies here to really explore, Rhinar's kind of full potential as that original Brute, right? The first one on the scene here. So starting off here, Rhinar was just for anyone who's kind of like new to the channel for our hero profiles. This isn't meant to be like a deck tech or anything like that. So this is more to explain the intricacies of the hero and their gameplay, their lines, things like that. So if you're looking for a deck tech per se, this is probably not the video for you. However, you probably will learn more than this than you would from deck tech, in my opinion. Yeah. So I'll let Rob start us off here.
Yeah, sounds good. Awesome. So first of all, tell me about what kind of player might be interested in trying out Rhinar, and what about the hero or the play style might appeal to up and coming Brute mains?
So I think the general theme in Rhinar is there's such a wide range of things, and there's such a wide range of decks you can build, and because of that, I think there's a wide range of players who are attracted to him. I'm a player who really appreciates low variance decks. So it's weird that I gravitated toward Rhinar for a few of these decks because everything's random, right? You're rolling some dice, you're discarding random cards. But I'm the type of player who enjoys the deck in how I can control that randomness and use it to my advantage. Because there are payoffs for that randomness. Scab Skin Leather's insanely strong piece of equipment. But it comes at a high risk, right? So knowing when to use it, knowing when to not use it, those calculated odds and those risks, I think are really interesting. The other type of player is just somebody who likes throwing dice on the table.
That's me.
And I think generally
Guilty.
the way you can draw the line between them is after you play Sand Sketch Plan, do you go find Blood Rush Bellow or do you go find Beast Within?
Yeah.
I can tell you, I go find Beast Within 99% of the time.
Yep.
I have searched for Blood Rush Bellow literally once as a last-ditch effort, which you can't even run in Rhinar, not effectively at least, and then just missed on it. Missed on the 1 in 4 discard chance.
0 success.
No,
0% success rate on that.
Yeah, you're either looking at a person who wants to control that randomness to use the higher power curve of it, or you're looking at somebody who wants to lean into it. And, Brute got a bunch of really fun new cards for that second archetype now. And they've also got, higher power cards for even that first archetype through, the power of Wild Rides, draw, discard, get go again.
No, fair enough.
But yeah, I think
also.
those are it. In terms of what about the play style that might appeal to people, I do think it is the diversity. Right? You can fashion any turn in any way you want because you have so much flexibility. You have flexibility on action points from Scab Skins. You have flexibility on going tall. Brute has a bunch of really, really amazing buffs. Or you can go wide by using things like pulping, wild ride, mandible claws, sand sketch plan. He can really take it into any direction. The only thing he's missing is disruption, which we'll talk a lot more about later, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
That's pretty robust explanation there. In case everyone's now going to go buy some brute cards here. So you kind of mentioned already the different builds available, right? So tell me a bit more about the different Rhinar builds floating around the meta right now. I know he has like a more slower paced club style that you go a little bit taller. Cards like Rolling Thunder, a new one coming in Everfest here, a more aggressive play style with claws, of course, as you mentioned. The person who grabs the bellows is probably running claws too, you know? Are either of these kind of styles and types of decks, are they better in the current meta, maybe a future meta? And what's kind of like your puts and takes for that?
I mean, the current meta is shifting really fast, but the general consensus that has been the case since Aria came out is the dominant decks really like to hold 4 and 5 card hands. And unfortunately, that's just because Brute lacks disruption. That's not a good spot for him within the meta, for Rhinar, that is. That being said, there are builds that you can make viable into this. So in a Lightning Briar meta, I ran Briar at a, I guess, decently high-level event here in Canada. It was a 1K event, and managed to come second in that, which was fantastic. Because, you know, you have tech against wide decks like Briar. You can run Bonehead Barrier. There's so much utility for Rhinar that he can really build his deck to answer anything. It's just, you're not going to do well against hyper-aggressive 5-card hand decks. But the general way I like to think of the archetypes available are your choice of weapon and is your game plan aggressive or control. And because of Rhinar's core deck building, which is filled with yellow 6s, you can pivot between these quite effectively, even within a single deck. So, you know, you can have a defensive club build, and then you can pivot to an aggressive claws build. And that used to be the most popular option, and you basically build a switch hitter deck. Now, with cards Wild Ride and Pulping, being able to run them both together, you can run a very aggressive club build, an aggressive /value club build, because you can get action points from elsewhere. Wild Ride turns a 2-card hand with a Tunic counter potentially into 11 damage. So if you draw the 6 and you discard it, you use the last one off the blue that you pitched, plus the Tunic counter, club for 5. Amazing. If you miss, you still deal 2 for 6, which is, I mean, lackluster, but at the end of the day, you're still on rate, right? Your hand could have been better, but it's not like you whiffed entirely. You still dealt damage. So because of that, I do think there is now an aggressive club build. You have access to Better Go again, and that aggressiveness kind of comes from aggressively value trading, right? So you can block with 2 cards piecemeal pretty easily, and then come in with these big 2-card hands, these big 3-card hands. Or when you draw the nuts, come in with a huge 5-card Blood Rush. And then I also think, you know, a defensive claws build does exist. It's mostly used against Prism, realistically speaking, just because, you know, you want to go for the fatigue strategy, run them out of auras, run them out of heralds. You've got things to pop those. You know, Sand Sketch Plan, pitch a blue, claw off the Tunic, or Sand Sketch Plan. Or sorry, Scab Skins, pitch a blue, claw, whatever it takes. You can destroy 2 auras theoretically on a 1-card hand if you are desperate to. So you can have aggressive, defensive, and then club, claw, and then mix and match those however you want, and decide within your 80 how much weight you want to put into each one. So my general preference is to run a pretty defensive claws build. I usually have, you know, or I used to run Sink Below, Fate Foreseen, and Red Unmovables in the matchup. I would never bring in all 9 defense reactions. I would sometimes bring the 6-0 costs. I would sometimes bring Sink and Unmovable. but I would never bring all 9.
Right.
And basically treat it pretty defensively and just wait until you get that big Blood Rush turn, come in for 25 damage, and then go back to defending. But that's also an easy pivot. Okay, you replace those D-reacts with Pulping and Wild Ride. Now you have an insanely aggressive deck. And, you have other things to add to your 80, like Arg Smash, Bonehead Barrier,
Right, some good
these
tech
really
choices.
specific tech cards, right?
Yeah.
There are ways that Rhinar can attack the meta, even though he doesn't have on-hit disruption. He has ways of messing up people's plans in other ways. Not every hero. He doesn't have an answer to every hero. But there are answers out there for a lot of things.
That's
you
awesome.
you only have the 80 cards, right? I do really like. You kind of mentioned the ability to kind of block with 2 cards and still have like viable options. It's a very, very similar strategy to like old bro. I say old Bravo. Bravo old.
Bravo old. Old bro.
I think old bro. I think the first time I played Rhinar, I was way more akin to Bravo when I started, and I found it a lot easier to like kind of acclimate to more a Rhinar style mid-range, more defensive, because the weapons are extremely similar. The play styles are actually more similar than people realize. You Dominate and Intimidate are like the heroes really are quite similar in a lot of ways. So I would also kind of recommend any Bravo players that are looking to maybe have different kinds of explosiveness here. Also might actually be really, really easy to learn Rhino, right? So I'll probably just add in here.
Totally.
Yeah, that's exactly how I got into Rhino as well.
I mean, you were a Bravo player for a while, right?
Fundamentally, I think I still am. You know what? I shouldn't talk. I haven't played a meaningful amount of Classic Constructors.
Pretty sure you're washed up. But let's continue to the next one.
Hold on. You can't be washed up if you never started.
That's a good defense.
I don't have anywhere to wash up from.
That's right. You're just floating in the ether.
Awesome. Hey, I'm happy to chill. I've explained my philosophy that, I'm happy being a high-level casual. If I win, it's just gravy. If I lose, it was a fun Saturday out.
Dimos, the high-level casual. That's going on. That's going on the discussion.
Official title.
Sure.
Awesome. Great. That was a great description. Thank you very much. So going to the next question here. So what key cards make up the different Rhinar builds in terms of equipment, core cards, and possible sideboards after Everfest? And what are the key cards you consider to now be core for Rhinar in any of these new builds, and why?
Right. So I think the core of Rhinar's builds comes down to 3 elements. What weapon are you running? How many 6 attacks do you have in your deck? And how many 0 blocks do you have in your deck? Right? So the 0 block hyper aggressive Rhinar became viable solely because of Everfest.
Yeah.
Prior to that, we'd really only seen, decent 0 block options in Levia with, Deadwood Rumbler and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Pulping's always been an amazing card, but running 3 0 blocks doesn't really change your life.
Doesn't change your core.
They are expensive, but if you're choosing to run them, it means I'm going to be playing these because the value on them is so fantastic. Right. Now that you've got those options, so you decide on those 3, right? Am I going Club or Claws? How many 6 attacks you run? The more aggressive your deck, the more 6 attacks you want. I've run decks as lean as 27 6 attacks. And I've run decks as dense as 41 6 attacks. In the more aggressive sideboard of that 80.
So that's just the full 80. You're not talking about like the 60 you're bringing in here. That's like
no.
80.
Well, when I'm sideboarding that 80 aggressively,
you get up to that.
You get to 41 6 attacks out of your 60 so cards.
And that included like Yellow Rage and Onslaught and stuff in there too. There's not a lot of
attacks. At that point, not many options.
Yeah. And that was purely just, I need to hit 6s discarded on everything, right? If you are running Wild Ride and Pulping and even Bare Fangs, which is a good card in all honesty, it's just the worst of the no blocks, which are already in the deck enough. And once you go from 6 to 9, you're expecting to draw a no block a turn, right?
Yeah.
You're more likely to than not.
Makes sense.
And because of that, I think there's a lot of ways you can pivot the build. If you have way fewer 6 attacks, you can just go, I can wait for my opening. I can arsenal this Blood Rush Bellow, wait until I see a good hand because I know everything in this deck blocks for 3 or more. Because if you're running 27/6 attacks, you're taking up some of that space with defense reactions, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Or with utility cards like Arg Smash, that kind of thing.
Right.
The possible sideboards that you'd be running are basically that. You know, am I bringing my 0 blocks? Am I bringing my defense reactions?
Yeah.
That's kind of your philosophy. How aggressive do I want to be? Although, like I said earlier, there's now this strong 2-card hand value argument.
Right.
Where prior 2-card hands in Rhinar, other than barraging beatdown into weapon swing, were pretty lackluster.
They were bad.
Yeah.
They were bad.
I mean, the best one you could get was Smash Instinct, which is good, 7 Intimidate, but
yeah, because so many
outside
of your
that
cards have
2-card
additional
hand,
costs, right?
that 3-cost strategy
yeah.
can be a little bit awkward.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
Yeah.
What about cards like, I always say big swing. I know it's swing big.
Swing
I don't know
big,
why
yeah.
I don't know
Big
why I say
swing.
big swing.
Yeah, me swing big.
Me swing big.
Spoken like a
It's
pro.
very much in the philosophy of the Brute card to have. I mean, Arg
Smash.
Smash is
with
one.
big
Smash with
tree.
big tree.
Yeah, I love that one.
Yeah, the cards are not exactly.
They're not articulate.
They're not pros
Yeah.
by any means.
Good flavor. Yeah, good
Yeah,
flavor.
It's good
Exactly.
flavor. Yeah, I love that.
Swing big. I think it's a card that goes into every Brute deck. I don't see a world in which you don't include that in any Brute deck ever.
It's so good.
The value is so good.
Yeah.
Brute has so many good buff options. That card single-handedly makes Red Awakening Bellow fantastic. 11 damage, Intimidate, 3-card hand. Like that's an amazing rate.
Yeah.
Regardless. And I haven't talked about it much because I think it just goes into every deck as a no-brainer. Like it never comes out.
Yeah.
Okay, fine.
No
You're blocking it unless you're throwing, 6 points of armor or 5 points of armor at it. You're not gonna be able to use that quick into that quick into.
Fair enough. Yeah.
I mean, there are some fringe cases where I swing big for 8. They block with 3 cards. They play something out of arsenal that's going to strengthen their next turn, right?
Right. Yeah.
Maybe a guardian plays an aura. Maybe Briar plays a Channelmount Heroic, and they set up for the turn afterwards, and maybe they can use it. But that just means I get a free 4 or 5.
You bought yourself a free turn pretty much at that point.
Yeah. And in Rhinar 4-card hands, they're going to be coming in for at bare minimum 12 damage, probably 2 intimidates, at maximum
sky's the limit.
27, 28, give or
yeah.
take. You know what I like? You can do ridiculous things, chaining Blood Rush Bellows, Savage Feast, Beast Within, Claw, literally any other attack, and you're up to 26 damage as a base value.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
Awesome.
I mean, I think as you said, big swing is a bit of a no-brainer. I know there was I'm going a bit off script here. I know there's Rolling Thunder, and I think there's one more.
There's high roller. Oh no, high
roller. Ready to roll is a KO.
No, I think that was
as far as Rhinar goes.
It's just 3
Thunder.
minus the ready to roll. Yeah, so it's just
right.
2 that applies to Rhinar. Yeah.
What do you think of Rolling Thunder? How does that?
I think it's
tickle your fancy. Oh, you don't look very pleased with it.
No, I don't like it, and I don't like it for a couple of reasons. One of which is so the average value when you roll a 6-sided die is 3.5. The average 1-cost buff is between 3 and 4. I would play Red Awakening Bellow every time over that card. I would play Red Barrage and Beatdown every time
that
over
makes
that
sense.
card.
Yeah.
I'm not. If you're running a build where you're running Skull Crushers and is it
Rob is intrigued.
Bad Beats? The one that
Bad Beats.
If
you rolled a 4, 5, or 6, or 5 or 6, or a 6,
If you're looking for excuses to roll dice, absolutely.
Yeah.
If you're trying to put a deck together, it doesn't impress me. I mean, if you want a chance to come in with 10 damage on a 2-card hand, play Wild Ride.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right.
Just have to discard.
The odds that you come in for 11 damage are way higher than by using Rolling Thunder. The downside is it doesn't block. Fair enough.
Yeah.
I acknowledge that is a huge downside. Things that don't block are lethal. For that reason, I think Rhinar is best with 2 to 3 potions in the deck. I usually only run 1 or 2 because I'm just too scared to have that blue no block for a second.
Oh yeah.
Fair enough. Okay.
Awesome.
Okay, so it's a pretty good explanation of kind of the new the Majestics anyways that Rhinar can actually use here. So as far as the matchups go, right? What matchups? I think you mentioned the hyper aggressive in general, but specifically speaking, are there what matchups does Rhinar struggle with overall? What do you consider like favorable matchups? Let's keep it within like the Everfest meta. There's no reason to like project any farther than the next couple months here. So what does he struggle with, and what does he actually do well into?
Generally struggles with anything aggressive, especially if they're aggressive and they run on hits. So because of that, he suffers versus Briar. Even on like the, I guess, slightly slower channel map Heroic Briar, they're still running some cards that have on hits. They still really like those big 5-card hands on channel turns. It's hard to time your turns when you can do them for that same reason. New Bravo, exact same boat. He's aggressive. He likes to hold 4 or 5-card hands. He runs on hits because he's a Guardian. That's what they do. And his damage output is just really high. Right? He effectively gets 5 damage off of Pitch in the Blue, right? If you can follow up from the ability.
Right.
So, other than that, he absolutely smashes control. The more controlling a deck is, the more Rhinar can just slam through it. Has no issues versus Dash, has no issues versus Oldhim. If somebody tries to play slower than him, he will just eat them for lunch. I think Old Bravo has about a 50-50 matchup into him. I haven't played it too much in Everfest, but historically, I'd say if Rhinar runs 3 red unmovables, you can 2-card block Crippling and then come back with some really solid damage.
That's fair.
Other than that, struggles against Katsu, always has, always will.
That's
again,
fair.
like
Talk about hyper aggro,
he has minimum 2 on hits every single turn. And half the time that ends up being 3 off of Whelming Gustwave, right?
Probably has the most on hits. Like Katsui is the one.
Yes,
who has
exactly. He has the most consistent on hits, and even though they're not, singularly the most impactful, over the course of a game, you go, ooh, I need to block this. I can't let him draw a card and come at me for another 4. Right. I got to block this out. And if you're doing that every turn, it's tough to get until you're basically praying you just draw really strong natural cards, and or their deck just isn't aggressive enough to break you before you get to your second cycle.
That totally makes sense.
Awesome explanation. Yeah, I can relate to all of that. Playing Dash into Rhinar feels terrible, and playing Rhinar into some of those control decks, it feels kind of good. Awesome. So going to the next question here. So what would you consider the proper equipment loadout for Rhinar? And are there budget options in any of those slots?
Yes, I think Rhinar has the best budget loadout available, to be honest.
You call him Rhinar cheap.
Yeah, he's cheap.
I'm saying you can build him cheap. That's how I started playing Rhinar, was because other than my budget Bravo deck, Rhinar was by far the cheapest one to build at the time.
So Rhinar is the one you want to settle down with. That's the one that you're going to
get. No, frugal, middle of the road lifestyle, does not need.
I like it.
This is like fab dating.
It doesn't need 5 L's to run the deck. You know what I mean?
That's fair.
The ideal loadout is, probably tunic, scabskin leathers,
maybe skull cap,
gambler's gloves, purely as insurance for scabskins, and then the headpiece you're a bit more flexible on. The default is Arcanite Skullcap because Rhinar really wants to hold 4 and 5-card hands, but doesn't have the on hits to guarantee that he'll be able to dissuade the other person from attacking back. So because of that, the extra armor off of Skullcap really helps. You also have access to Skull Horn, which is Arcane Barrier 2. That's a rare and powerful thing. It also has a nice effect on it if you're running a high 6 density deck. Also, weirdly strong, especially in Blitz, is Talismanic Lens. Opt to know exactly what you're going to draw off of Blood Rush.
Right.
You can plan that out before you commit hard on the opponent's turn.
Yeah, no, it's fair. It's a good point in Blitz.
Really nice.
I wasn't, because Blitz are so fast, right? So You don't necessarily need like extra armor. You just need that extra damage to kill them before they do anything to you, right?
And
So
Rhinar's
Yeah,
damage
and-
potential is just so high.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on your philosophy, right?
Yeah.
When Ira was an absolute menace, you needed the 2 armor off Skullcap to block that second Kodachi to just stop mass for 1 extra turn.
Yeah.
In other more aggressive decks, I mean, you probably still want it for Benji, to be honest.
Fair enough, yeah.
But, the options are available.
No, that makes sense.
Right? In terms of budget options, Goliath Gauntlet, Snapdragon Scalers, Barkbone Scrapping, hands down.
That makes
you can
sense.
Goliath Gauntlet most of the good attacks in your deck. Just push it further, and it makes it so that you can push that lethal. Because the amount of times when you're playing the deck and you go, ooh, I'm 1 point off of lethal, they have 1 point of armor to survive this, and you have no way of pushing that extra damage because you're never going to see a 4-card hand again because it's so late in the game. Stings. Goliath Gauntlet solves that problem wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
Snapdragon Scalers, you basically run as a 1-trick with Savage Feast. So you Savage Feast, Snapdragon Scalers, you draw a card, you can really continue extending your turn. And Barkbone Strapping is, there's arguments that if you're running a hyper-aggressive Rhinar, it's just better than Tunic.
Better than Tunic, yeah.
Yeah, because it blocks better, and there's more of a chance of an upside if you think your game's going to last less than 6 turns.
True. It's definitely like the shorter value, right? Because if you can't get at least like 2 resources out of your Tunic, it's a short game, right? So that definitely makes sense for definitely more explosive game here. So we kind of keep going.
And then all the weapons are pretty cheap on him.
Right.
He's got a token and a rare or 2 rares.
The
technically.
claws, I guess. Yeah.
The claws, 2 rares. Yeah.
Skull Crushers are a really interesting option.
Yep.
They give him armor, which is really nice for him.
Yeah.
And they can give him some upside. I just think that because you're choosing them over Gambler's Gloves, you're incentivized to roll dice so much less.
Yeah.
Because
it's an interesting...
only time you can roll dice at will is on those super expensive scabs.
Yeah.
If you miss, you're done.
Yeah.
Okay, I've held a 5-card hand. I've taken 10 damage to do so. Now I can't even get my turn to start because I missed that.
It's a bit counterintuitive.
And you got to do it all again, and it's so rare. You have the life runway for that.
Yeah.
He's got a lot of equipment options. He runs enough blues that if he does run Null Room, he can pay for them quite happily.
Yeah. And he has access to Null Room 4 with his helmet.
With his skull horn.
And you can still keep the tunic or your boots. Yeah.
I don't think. Yeah, I'm always torn on how much Null Room to run.
Yeah.
In Blitz, I might run 4. In CC, I probably only run 3. Because that extra cost of that 1 last equip is quite a bit.
Right.
Does
It's an extra
card.
Yeah, exactly.
And also, if it's Null Room 4, you're pitching at least 2 cards.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you have a 2-card Rhinar hand, which outside of swing big, kind of sucks. Although I guess with Wild Ride now, it's pretty solid.
Right.
Depending on
then you need to make sure, but that's only good with Tunic.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're running Null Rune 4, you sacrifice maybe your scab skins then to be able to do that.
Yeah,
which you don't really want to do.
I mean, it's a different plan. And if you're going for it and it's deliberate,
might work.
Sure, it can definitely work for you, especially if you're on a yellow deck rather than a blue deck.
Right.
Yeah.
I personally prefer the blue decks because I like the big combo claw turns that I spend a turn and a half setting up, and I like being able to pay for unmovables.
That's true. Makes sense, yeah.
Just because, I mean, I think it is always important to be able to block a Crippling Crush, no matter what your deck is.
And no matter who's throwing it at
it's that simple.
Yeah.
And back in the day, it used to be important to be able to block a Steel Blade Supremacy.
Back in the day. I like
back in the day.
Yeah.
Well,
We're
then
old.
they came out with Prism and
what's
Dory
story?
sitting in a corner.
Yeah. That cold foil one, I gotta throw it in the trash. I don't think that was the right one to pick for my farewell, but that's okay. That's not the point here. So rolling into we've talked about the cards, we've talked about the equipment, we've talked about the character, we talked about Rhinar themselves here. So now let's talk a little bit about the play style here, the gameplay. So key attack lines that Rhinar can build towards, like lines that kind of you can as you said before, like when you keep those 5-card hands for like 10, like you take 10 damage, keep those 4 or 5-card hands, go for some tempo. Or as you said, lands in like there's the slower builds, the more control oriented builds, those kinds of builds too. Are there any kind of key attack lines in either of those builds that you think players who are interested in learning Rhinar should kind of keep tabs on and maybe work towards?
Yes. With Rhinar, it's hard to plan them from the outset because so much of his game plan is you discard a random card, right?
Yep.
So I pitch 1 card, I play 1 card out of Arsenal. I have 3 cards left in my hand. They're all 6s. Yeah. Maybe 1 or 2 is red and then 1 or 2 is yellow.
Yeah.
Depending on which one of those I discard, it changes my attack line.
Mm-hmm.
So because of that, I think the line starters are much more important.
Mm-hmm.
So Blood Rush Bellow, you play Blood Rush Bellow, you discard a card, you draw 2 new cards. It changes your entire hand.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's really hard to plan that turn out unless you're playing Blood Rush from hand and you have an attack in Arsenal, which is, I highly recommend it, absolutely. But sometimes you get the Blood Rush and that's what ends up in Arsenal.
Yeah.
Key starters are Savage Feast, if you can scam yourself an action point.
Yeah.
Savage Feast, it costs 1. The card that you discard replaces itself, so you're basically coming in for 1 for 6 with an Intimidate, which is amazing.
Yep.
And the only downside is you need to find an action point for it. So you're doing
right.
roll scabs, you're running time snaps.
Sand
you're
sketched
doing...
maybe if you manage to get it off. Yeah.
I do really like Sand Sketch. The issue with Sand Sketch is, you've got the Beast Within, you Sand Sketch to find the Savage Feast, or vice versa.
Yeah.
It never lands how you want it to.
Yeah, that's true.
Because in your head you go,
dream.
ooh, with this lineup, I could extend this for 25 damage. And then it's, okay, well, we discarded the suboptimal card the first time.
Here's 10 damage.
And then we discarded the other card the last time.
Yeah.
Now I'm holding a Beast Within, all pitch and club, and now my total turn is 13 damage instead of 25.
It sounds like a lot of Rob's turns that he's been pulling out against me in some of those gameplay videos.
It's too real.
That's fair. It's all coming back to me now.
Yes. So in terms of attack lines, you can definitely plan out your 2-card hands, and you can definitely plan out your 3-card hands. But other than that, you kind of follow a pattern of, this is a good starter, let's see where it goes.
Yeah.
The only exception is on second cycle, where when things are coming up.
Right.
Although second cycle is not a factor.
Yeah.
We're going to put that in quotation marks for everybody. So second cycle, in case, back in the day, we're going to say back in the day.
Yes.
Back in the day where matchups were like Bravo, Rhinar, something else that doesn't kill you in turn versus something, even Dory. What you do is you do stuff and then you pitch so that when your deck comes up next round for your second cycle, you know what's in there and you can set up really nice turns with the right pitch, the right combo cards, God forbid the right attack cards. You really have like a good essence of what's still in the deck and you're not even chained. So you don't even have to banish any of it away. So it's a really riveting kind of. We're gonna have a back to basics on that later.
And I was also gonna add too to the starters. So now with cards like Wild Ride and Bare Fangs, you actually introduce even more randomness because you're drawing a card into that mix. So it's not just like I have 3 cards that are 6 attacks that I want to discard. It's like I could draw into a Blood Rush and discard it now. So there's so much more variety now, or I guess variance. Yeah.
Beast Within does the same thing, right? You can flip, okay, oh, there goes a Blood Rush. Ooh, there goes Barrage and Beatdown. Ooh, there goes a Reckless Swing. I kind of needed that to close out the game. Mm-hmm. All these other things. But at the end of the day, 1 card is worth it in a lot of instances, right?
Yeah. Totally.
I will always pay 3 to draw another card, right? Mm-hmm. I will never not do that. I think with the draw and discard cards, especially with Wild Ride and with Helping, I think you need to make a very conscious choice. Is this coming in on a 2-card hand, or is this coming in on a Blood Rush turn? Because the only kind of middle of the road options for those cards as independent turn starters are, pitch a blue, Wild Ride into Savage Feast. But that's dependent on what you draw. That's dependent on what you discard.
Yeah, you might even discard the Savage Feast with Wild Ride, right? Yeah.
The odds of you starting with those 4 cards, and the combo doesn't even deal that much damage.
Right.
The odds of you starting with those 4 cards and being able to play them out in the order you want to is less than is low, right? So I think those cards, it's a 2-card hand. I'm hoping to follow up with a weapon swing afterwards. I have my tunic counter,
right?
Or I'm going to crack my barkbone strapping to make it work.
Yeah.
Or you make them your first attack after Blood Rush.
Total sense.
Right?
Yeah.
And you're acknowledging, look, I got 4 cards in this hand. I'm going to have a different 4 cards in this hand after I play these 2 cards.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. So if anyone is looking now to try Rhinar out in a more competitive fashion, what are some of the cards that you recommend are a must-buy for those players?
Yeah, either competitive or high level casual.
Or high level, if you want to smash people at armories, that's fine too. Yeah.
I think so many of the Brute Majestics are just so good, and they make it into the deck for so many reasons. Beast Within, 100% is going to be in there. Swing Big, 100% going to be in there.
But your Blood Rush.
Blood Rush is probably the best card in the game. In terms of sheer power level.
Yeah.
All in all, the best playable card in the game. The best card in the game is a Novus.
Yeah, it's second best.
Right. Yeah. Or Crown of Seeds.
Yeah. It's climbed up there. Yeah.
So Sarvo's broken. Got it. All right. Keep going.
Well, okay. If we want to get into the relative value of triggered abilities versus active abilities, he's so far above the curve. There's
ignoring that, because that's too much.
That's a whole other video.
Yeah. What do you think about? So what about Alpha Rampage? Is that I know.
Is that a must-buy for Rhinar? Yeah.
Is it good enough? It's a specialization. I mean,
It is the highest damage card that he has access to.
It's true.
A very good card.
I thought you were gonna say it's a card.
No, it is. It is definitely a card. It is a very good card with Barrage and Beatdown, and a profoundly lackluster card otherwise.
How could you take away that turn 1 beatdown
Alpha Rampage, discard and massacre?
That's why you run it. You either see it turn 1 or you pitch it to make it happen second cycle. Or in a lot of instances, you don't pitch it for second cycle, but you'll Fate Foreseen it or sink below it for second.
Yeah, you'll get it to the bottom somehow.
Yes, you get it to the bottom somehow, and then because if you're running that slower, more controlled build, you're more likely to go to second cycle. Yeah. You go to second cycle. Okay, here's 13 damage. You can't block, right? Yeah. Or realistically, maybe here's 12 damage because it's a lot easier to pitch yellow Barrage and Beatdown than it is red. But it's really hard to use on a Blood Rush turn. Because you need to pay a full 3 and you need to discard an entire card.
And you want to make use of claws too at the same time, right? Like a Blood Rush without the claws.
Exactly.
It's expensive. It's getting expensive here.
You even want to make use of Club. Club comes in for 7 on a Blood Rush turn. It's really good. If you're playing it off of Alpha Rampage, you need to pitch 2 blues in order to do it. Right. 1 for Blood Rush, 2 for Club, 3 for Alpha Rampage.
3 more,
So I'm happy to see it on its own. I'm happy to see it with Barrage and Beatdown. It's a great game closer. It's a great game opener if you see it early enough. Beyond that, if I see it in another hand and I'm attacking with that hand, I'm hoping it's the random card that I discard. Because it's
that's
pricey.
Fair.
And it's so hard to buff, right? You can't really land Awakening Bellow on it. I mean, you kind of can if that's what you use your tunic counter for,
right?
But it feels bad doing that with 3-cost cards because they should be good enough on a standalone blue. It does 1 less damage than Swing Big, and it costs you an extra resource.
Or I guess 1 more damage.
You 1 more damage.
Yeah, sorry. Sure.
It does not
1 more damage. Right?
Yeah.
At the time, I think at the time, at Welcome to Wraith,
back in the day,
option. But now, back in the day, say that thing like 10 times.
Back in the day, you ran Yellow Raging Onslaught because you were
sure.
You ran Yellow.
How times have changed.
Speaking of Yellow Raging Onslaught, so now let's move into some of the rares and commons here. I'm not talking about specifically Raging Onslaught. Barrage Beatdown's a 9 of. Like I think every single run.
Well.
Most of them are a 9 of.
If you're running a really aggressive,
Barrels attack,
Wild Ride, and Pulping.
Oh, that is not as
the
good.
reds.
That's
you
true.
definitely don't run the reds. You probably don't even run the yellows.
Sure.
You just need
I
that
would agree
density
with
of 6
that.
attacks.
Yeah,
But
but they're rare, so they're cheap enough. You can
no,
might as well
absolutely.
pick
You
them
should
up.
you should have 9 of them in your toolbox for when you're building your deck.
Mhm.
Because they're what, 20 cents a pop, something like that.
Probably for now, while it's
Brute
still
cards in general
available.
are really cheap.
Yeah,
Like
That's fair.
even our best Majestic, Beast Within, and Bloodrush Velo are both less than $4, I think, right? Give or take.
maybe
Fair.
prices have
They're-
changed with the
yeah.
out of print stuff, but they used
Yeah,
to be
they're
around
probably-
there.
okay, yeah.
Probably Bellows is
Maybe
probably,
like 10.
probably $8, $9, $10. But okay,
No, it's not.
that's fair.
But for the power
I bought a
level and for
Bellows
the
last week for $4,
versatility,
and that was market price, I guarantee you.
yeah, and
Well-
you can kind of move them into most of the archetypes anyway for Rhinar, right? Like
Yeah,
Bloodrush fits
and
in all of them.
those 3 are definitely auto includes.
Yeah,
You want a toolkit of a lot of the Majestics. You can probably skip the utility ones like Bonehead
Like
Barrier,
Arc
Arc
Smash.
Smash,
right.
those kinds of things,
Yeah.
unless you have a very specific need for them.
Mhm.
But there's a pretty strong argument that, even against Dash, you probably don't need Arc Smash anymore.
Right, I was going to mention that because she's already very control oriented. That you don't need to be breaking her items to do well, right?
Yeah, and I mean, if you don't have Arc Smash, you can still lose to Dash if they run a mid-range build, put out 2 items, go a boost attack,
The
boost
high
attack,
octanes,
pistol,
maybe.
pistol.
Right.
Yeah,
Yep.
and high octane turns also blow you out, right? High octane Dash can do that in any situation.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, the key rares definitely get Savage Feasts. Breakneck Batteries are they're a good option.
Right.
If you were running a value 2-3 card hand setup, Breakneck Battery is great. It's eclipsed by things like Wild Ride, which lets you do the same thing but with 1 less card in your hand to start with, but doesn't block.
There's no block. Yeah.
Yeah, but if you're looking for that critical density of, I want to do a 6 damage attack with Go Again and then something else afterwards, Breakneck's a good option.
Yep.
Hulping's a rare that should be in the set.
Right.
Other rares, even bigger than that, is good in Rhinar.
Yeah.
Even bigger than that. I haven't heard that take in a little while.
Yes. Okay. So,
You've
a
got
lot
a
of
story.
people think it's limited to low damage attacks like Kadachi because it means any attack you flip.
Like me. Yeah.
Yeah. Any attack you flip is coming to your hand.
Yep.
However, Rhinar deals so much damage that damage gets pushed through. Like, even if they don't block a 6 damage attack, every attack in your deck hits for 6 damage.
Yep.
Right? So even though the numbers are really big, and it's not Kadachi for 1, if you hit an attack off that opt, you still hit it. Second of all, I think Rhinar gets more benefit from opt than Katsu does. Rhinar does more drawing of his own accord that matters to him, right? A lot of times, Katsu, so long as he draws a 0 cost, he doesn't really care what it is,
Right.
because it's getting immediately discarded,
Yeah.
so he can search up the red, right, to go find a Fluster Fist or a Whelming or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Whereas Rhinar, if you can opt 2 or opt 3, add a card to your hand and go, okay, I know the card that I left there is also a 6. This Wild Ride that I just drew is gonna hit.
Good. Yeah.
And I can and then I can follow up with the club afterwards, and I can have a 3 attack turn. Right, the attack
That's
started
true.
at the Wild Ride that you got to your hand. Also,
Right.
it's good for. There are tricky ways where you can use it with Blood Rush, and oft is also just good for sinking cards. But again, downside doesn't block.
Yeah.
Doesn't block.
It's a
You
theme
need to
here.
be really picky about how many of these no block cards that you run.
Right.
So you're telling me that I'm supposed to run 3 red Rally the Rear Guard in combination with even bigger than that to get the 6
give it
power
some-
and the flexibility of blocking for 5 total with those cards. I understand completely now.
That's the message here.
I'm saying that's the coward's option. I'm saying you run 8
Saying that's the coward's
You
option.
run
8-0
Bear
blocks.
Fangs, you run Wild Ride, you
God.
run Pulping,
Pulpings.
you run 3 potions, you run even bigger than that in red and in
You just want to give me.
And you also
want to give
add
me
in
migraine when I open it.
Tear limb from limb to boot.
Oh,
Add that in
stop,
there.
Yes,
stop.
absolutely. Tear Limb from Limb, honestly, if you are running a deck that intends to go to second cycle, get 1 copy of Tear Limb from Limb.
See if you like it or not.
No,
Shred it if you
I
want.
think there is. If you're playing Tear Limb from Limb, if you don't win on that turn, you're losing. Right?
So you just hate yourself.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Well, okay. Tear Limb from Limb is garbage if you're going into it blind. If you pitch it and it's your second cycle and you know for a fact that you're doubling this Alpha Rampage or that you're doubling this Swing Big, worth it. If you're playing it blind on anything other than turn 0,
don't bother.
It's usually not worth it because of you're discarding the card that maybe you want to attack with. And then even if you're coming in with, I don't know, Riled Up for 13 at that point, it still costs you a 4-card hand to deal 13 damage, which is fine, but why would I take that damage to deal 13 when I could block this, wait to draw my Blood Rush, and come in for 18 as an average turn, right? Blood Rush, Claw, anything.
For like a 6 attack, yeah.
No, that totally makes sense.
What about the equips too? We haven't really talked about like Scab Skin, so I would say that this is probably, a must-buy for Rhinar.
Yeah.
For the high-level casual competitive Rhinar.
It's 3 points of armor, and it can get you out of some sticky situations. And it gives you... This doesn't really happen much anymore, but it sometimes does against Viscera, I guess. But it gives you a window. If your opponent does nothing, you can turn a garbage hand into a fine hand just by getting some action points, right?
Right.
You can, get a couple action points, come in with Riled Up, just vanilla Riled Up, and then a Club Swing, and then arsenal that 4th card, right? You still put out 10 damage off of those 3 cards. That's fine, right? Because your hand was no, and I guess your hand was all resource cards, right?
Right, and because I guess Prism is becoming so popular, or has been, for a while, it makes a lot of sense to get those options that can give you more action points in this current meta, anyway.
Yeah, if you're playing against Prism, slap Sand Sketch Plan into Arsenal 100% of the time.
Nice.
There's no reason to have any other card in your arsenal, and just try to run them out of auras.
Just whittle them down,
that only works up to the point where they're running like 15, 16. If they're running like the full 21 auras,
good luck, I guess.
If they're running the full 21 auras, you hit the gas.
Okay.
Because that means there's 21 cards in their deck that block.
That just don't block. Yeah,
don't block or block for nothing.
Right.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense here. So, rolling into our last kind of topic that I wanted to discuss here for Rhinar, what do you think of what do you think of Rhinar in the current ProQuest meta, and leading up to kind of the skirmish, battle hardened Pro Tour, so mid-May, essentially anything using the current Everfest meta. What do you think about him?
So, I think we're in the part of the meta cycle where a new set comes out, aggro is super strong, and then over time that'll peter out into something a bit more sustainable.
Aggro being Starvo here?
Well, I think we've already kind of seen shifts on Starvo. Like Starvo running 20 element cards and just coming in for like 9 dominating Autumn's Touch.
Hold by Autumn's Touch, bro.
It's garbage, right? I think the best version of New Bravo is far and away you run mostly Bravo cards. You run the
old Bravo with improvements.
Yeah, you run the 3-block Lightning, Ice, Earth cards, the pulses, and then you go, okay, maybe I can get one sneaky lucky draw during the game, but otherwise I'm playing for second cycle, and I know I can flip this Oaken for 11 dominate, or I know I can land this final for also 11 dominate. Those kinds of things, and you just use his ability as a value engine, not as a tempo engine.
True, that's Starvo. We're talking about Rhinar.
Well, I'm saying, I think that's going to be a very relevant shift, because currently, Rhinar can't compete with just blind aggro. Because he loses to the on hits, he loses to the sheer damage of it, and so on, right?
Right.
And no disruption too. So
yeah, he also currently loses to aggro/tempo Viscera. Just because Viscera plays Revel in Runeblood, and Rhinar has no way to answer that sheer amount of damage off a single card.
Yeah.
And it's not like hyper aggressive decks ever want to block, which makes your hero power basically useless.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
I mean, there's a decent argument for pummels I used to run Pummel as a 1 or 2 tech of just because it was your only hope in hell against Saber's Volta.
Sure.
And you need to kind of think of those little one-off weird things that'll get you out of situations, because if you go into against an aggro matchup, you're playing from behind already. You need some trick. That being said, I think as the meta peters down more towards mid-range kind of thing, I think Rhinar will stand a solid chance. I think the general thing is, if the meta is aggressive, Rhinar is bad. If the meta is control, Rhinar is fantastic.
Makes sense.
Okay.
It's that simple, and I don't think that there's been enough cards for him to change that balance.
Yeah,
Wild Drive helps because it gives really strong 2-card hands. Unfortunately, no deck in this game is interested in trading 2-card hands.
Yeah. No, that's fair. I definitely agree with, like, as far as when we saw Everfest come out and we thought we would get a lot more for Brute than we actually ended up getting just across the board, other than Ready to Roll, which was like not even for anyone but KO.
I mean, that's right? A KO card. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no. So I definitely agree with, I don't think it changed how he was approaching the meta beforehand, and so he's going to approach it the same way anyway. So
hasn't changed
probably
the
later.
paradigm.
It
probably
gave
later
him
when
hyper aggressive options, which I think is really interesting for him.
But like, as far as his core strategy, his core like hero ability, and what he tends to do well against and tend to not do well against, that doesn't really change. And so I think I definitely agree there. And as it focuses more into like mid-range control, more disruption that tries to hit the hyper aggro decks, probably more towards like March kind of thing. And that's the end of February, March petering out into Rhinar.
It's funny how like swing big is kind of like anti-disruption, where you actually give
here, take a quicken.
Yeah, exactly. It's like,
but
it's
they have
interesting.
to block out. They have to block out. Though.
They have to block it out. Exactly.
Take a quicken after you block with 2 cards and some armor. I'll take that trade every time, because the odds that you can actually benefit from a quicken on at absolute best a 3-card hand are so low.
And then if you don't do anything with it and bank it, you get an extra turn anyway, which is great.
Yeah,
especially against aggro, because you want that turn to set up or to arsenal something. Get your 5-card hand off if you can.
Yeah, I think it's good against a lot of decks. There's some decks where you just don't even want to, like, they'll sit there, they'll block with 3, gain the quicken, and just have an even stronger turn because they can set up like the last card in Arsenal, they can craft their hand more, and then as Rhinar, you're not guaranteed to have a great hand of your own to actually stop what they're trying to do in the next turn. So you can actually just make it way worse. So I think it's definitely got like a bit of a flip side against like even like Chain. I don't want to give Chain a damn quick token turn 3, turn 4.
Realistically, I think Chain's probably the only deck that's bad to give the quicken token to.
Yeah, it's just too many cards. You just can't give it.
There's too many cards because they get cards outside of their hand, right?
Yeah.
Who else makes use?
Probably don't want to give Katsu the quicken token.
I'm not really worried about that.
But he got a lot of good tools that actually do help the quicken quite a bit and allow him to start at like middle start combo and really actually just go off on not a lot, recycle cards, and kind of get those awkward hands that you don't have the full combo. You can't look for the full combo. You just gave him a way into it. So I don't think it's as
However, no, Katsu is strong with a quicken token. Just as Rhinar, I'm not bothered about giving it to him because odds are he's either not going to need it or he'll just make it on his own with
even bigger than that.
Right?
Yeah,
so the odds that it lines up the turn I play swing big versus the turn that Katsu needs that quicken token, I think are low enough that I'm willing to take the risk for a card that's that far above rate.
Right. No, it's definitely true. I just have, whenever I've tested and tried it, I just pull that off, and then my next hand on Rhinar is complete dog. That I'm just like, wow, I gave him a quicken to like have coming in for 8. It's like they just laugh at me, and even with a quicken or without a quicken, it wasn't worth the space. Depending on your setup, right? It's kind of mixed uses there.
All variants, but that's Brute in a nutshell. So
that's Brute in a nutshell. All
swing big variants is variants I really like. It's variants I can control. It's variants that requires a calculated risk beyond random chance.
Yes,
I think that's a great way to go. I think those kind of reverse on hits are a great design space for where Brute can go, since it's very clear that we're never getting another yellow 6 or blue 6 that blocks for 3.
Right.
That's fair. Strong cards,
So-
but either way, appreciate your time, Dino. So hopefully
Always a
we've
pleasure
we've gone deep enough into Rhinar that we can convert
I
some.
think we went plenty deep. That was really good.
I'd hope so. The
don't-
one thing I haven't talked about is just how fun the class is.
Right.
You
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
do ridiculous things. You can
Do some janky stuff.
win. Yeah, you can win games you should lose, and you can lose games that you should win.
Yeah.
It's the physical Kano is what I call it, because every
Yes.
time I see that class, it just reminds me so
absolutely.
much of Kano.
Especially in Blitz, the Kano Rhinar matchup is who sees a combo card first, and then you win. And there's
Over like a turn.
there's
Yeah.
literally
one,
nothing the other person can do.
One
Yeah.
turn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have won Blitz games in like some pretty big skirmishes in a single turn as Rhinar. First turn kill against Kano.
Yeah.
The
As
lower
much as
health
you do when
helps.
they're on,
Yeah.
15.
20 life, that kind of thing. No,
Well,
that's
15
totally
with
true.
a single point of armor is a lot different from 20
Dory
with
or something.
Dory's 10.
Yeah.
Right?
No,
30 points
that's true.
total.
No,
Yeah.
that's fair. But appreciate your time, Rob. Always appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Hopefully, everyone enjoyed that hero profile. So with that, we are finished with the Brute class. Feel free to comment down below if you have any questions for us, have any questions for Demos. If you have any comments about what hero profile you'd like to see next, we could definitely incorporate it. And if you like the video, feel free to leave a like, subscribe if you like the content. This discussion hero profile will definitely be up on Spotify, because I'm sure many of us would like to listen to it on the ride to the armory, shuffling your Brute deck and making changes on the fly, because that's probably what I would be doing. And so we'll have that up on Spotify as well. And with that, wherever you're watching in the world, whenever you're watching, have a good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. And with that, see everybody next time.